Characteristics of the egoic entity. Survival, renewal. The egoic entity wants to renew itself and maintain its existence. This is done by tricking the mind into identification with form, because any form can be used to maintain the existence of the egoic entity. Tricking consciousness into identification with any form, spawning thoughts that express my current state. I am in the formless now. I am seeing this. I am doing that. This is what I call descriptive thought, as opposed to creative thought. Now, every thought is creative inherently, but some thoughts are, in the form that they take, more descriptive, and others really speak our reality into existence, which lead to identification and therefore losing of the formless. So the egoic entity tries to give any reason possible to believe in a certain form, thought, emotion, desire, attachment, in order to grasp onto something, onto some form from which it can continue its working mechanisms or of comparing, analyzing, etc. It seeks your weak trigger points and give you reasons to give in. These reasons are in the form of thought, in order to avoid this trigger or attain the desire. In doing that, you affirm the reality and importance of the form. For example, I need to stop meditating and lay down with some back music because my concentration is depleted. If I can't reference anything personal to you, it seeks surrogate thoughts. It may give you thoughts that belong to another person about the interaction with another one. For example, Tony Robbins defending himself against a news reporter. This strengthens the ego. The ego has a self-destroying mechanism. It is needed to function in the world of form to a certain extent, but at one point it creates so much suffering that it leads to surrender, which finally dissolves the ego when its job is done. The job is to fully develop thinking and language faculties to get started in the world of form. Proliferation. Affirm its existence by delineating and strengthening boundaries. When threatened, the egoic entity wants to renew itself and maintain its very existence, and in existing, it is prone to strengthening its sense of self. As it is a survival mechanism for the human species to survive, it looks upon itself as necessary to survive. The ego wants to constantly reaffirm its sense of self and therefore its existence. This is done by delineating boundaries. With all its activities, it gives itself some form to cling to, so it renews itself by identification with form and letting forms arise that it can further cling to. Making myself right. By telling myself that I am right in my head, this is called self-assurance. Also looking for proof on the level of form, events, thoughts, etc., and the inclination to prove through thought that I am doing everything right or that I am in the right state, etc. Making others wrong. For example, seeking faults in others, judging them, pointing out their mistakes. Looking for faults. The egoic entity strengthens itself by making others wrong and affirming the thinking mind's rightness. Therefore, it needs to prove to be right and constantly affirm its rightness through thought patterns or thoughts through looking for proof. For example, the proof that I am really in this thoughtless state. The form does not need any proof. Strengthening by defining boundaries. It is further strengthened by simply believing in the thoughts that come to mind, as every thought is in reference to the ego, the sense of self. Therefore, every thought that is paid attention to is reaffirmed to be important. Even thinking thoughts and letting go of them afterwards strengthens the ego, as they are believed in and held to be true for a certain short time period. The ego is dissolved when we radically refuse to pay attention to every thought. It is further strengthened by emotions that we experience, by believing in what the mind tells us. I am sad, angry, happy because of affirms the I that is defined by form, our form identity. Comparing myself to others, I strengthen the boundaries between the sense of me and the others. The egoic entity strengthens its sense of self through conflict and suffering. Through conflict, it is delineated. Through suffering, it strengthens its sense of entity because it needs a suffering entity that experiences suffering. That's why the awakening process, you will find relapses on the ego that occur because the ego finds ways to get back into its strength, its sense of self, because it tries to protect itself by reincarnating in different forms that bring you back to identification with form. Fear, pain body attack, forming thoughts that pull you out of meditation or distract you, etc. Wanting to be special. The egoic entity tries to find proof for the specialness of the self, in that a more acute sense of identity is formed. Mechanisms. Interpreting, that is making sense of experiencing and emotions of thought. Making sense of an experience. Michael Gazzaniga has called this mechanism the interpreter. The egoic entity makes sense of the emotions of thought patterns or events which give rise to thought that explain these formations, which is important for the survival of the egoic entity because it needs a coherent worldview in order to refer everything within its worldview to itself. Uninterpreted, like not made sense of, the world will be chaotic and it would not be possible for the egoic entity to function. This is to compare, analyze, and project into the future. The desire to control or inclinations to seek circumstances that satisfy the illusion of being controlled through mind activity. Our ego makes us analyze the past and project the analysis into the future. It tries to control the future. Whatever can be controlled is easy to survive. The superiority aspect of the ego comes from the assessment of, am I the master of the situation, or is the situation the master of me? In the first case, there is no threat, but in the second case, there is something to be feared. Also, there is the longing for circumstances that are controlled through the mind. A scientific theory, a software code, are very appealing environments where ourselves gets the illusion of control. Being able to control gives security. The sense of lost control gives rise to the desire for security. This security is taught in several ways, through insurance, video games, where everything is new and still comparatively controlled, and so on. Detecting inferiority and dealing with it, and detecting another person's superiority. Detecting inferiority. The egoic entity functions in a way to detect inferiority in ourselves. It does this to assess our chances for survival in the company of other humans. Ways to deal with it, mental ways. Avoid inferiority triggers, raising our score, denigrating the other person's score, accepting or avoiding and instead seeking to raise a different score of ours, accepting and avoiding and instead denigrating another score of another person, therefore he is bad at math. Denigrating the other person as a whole, therefore he is a jerk altogether. Making inferiority into a story that functions for delineation and identity building purposes. Accepting the score and affirming to ourselves that the score doesn't matter. External ways. Telling others and being affirmed in the inferiority, which can be used for identity building and delineation purposes. Telling others and being affirmed in the superiority of others, adding something to enhance my overall score, which is triggered by a specific score. Going to the ladies' gym because in addition to taking self-help seminars, when you are not feeling fit enough. Okay? We as humans feel an almost natural pull towards perfection and completion, but we make a fundamental mistake in thinking that adding on to will make us complete. It rather is finding the completion that is obstructed. Our entire marketing world caters for the needs of those who seek perfection by adding on to. Everything we find triggers for imperfection. We are very imperfection conscious, so our marketing culture is about achieving perfection from the external. Analyzes the past and projects into the future. In doing so, the egoic entity does comparing. Identity formation. Ego makes out of everything that it can get an identity. It needs things to cling to and incorporate into the self-image and things to avoid. For example, a football team to love or one to oppose. Ego is longing for completion. It always looks for something it can add to the sense of self or to subtract. But in any case, it thinks that in a change of form it will be complete. But completeness is only experienced through abiding in the eternal self. The completion can be seen in the external realm by looking for the perfect partner, indecision because of the thinking that in the right decision will make an improvement, working on yourself, the use of cool words as is often observed in youth, adding stuff to the household, decoration articles, etc., so that the living room will be perfect. Of course, it's only a mirror of the internal state, or to a dish, a little more salt, a little more vinegar, and then it will taste just perfect, right? The ego is longing for completion. Whenever there is attachment to the improvement, it is a sign of the avoidance of incompletion. looking for growth and improvement. Egoism and self-importance. Through the constant self-reference, consciousness is tricked into believing that everything out there is important to the self. As the ego filters the experiences, nothing unimportant gets paid attention to, so only the experiences deemed important are given attention to, so that we falsely believe that only important things exist out there, and this gives rise to the notion that everything is important to ourselves. Many people are resisting now a future moment that is not even sure to occur. Viele Menschen wehren sich bereits jetzt gegen einen zukünftigen Moment, von dem sie noch gar nicht wissen, ob der überhaupt eintritt. It is not serving the surviving of the organism anymore, only the surviving of the egoic entity. Egoic thought patterns, affirming something to myself, you are tired, go lay down, you can do it, push yourself. Stating something in the negative, this ain't gonna happen. Complaining, not again. Finding reasons, sometimes your concentration is depleted, you can't meditate for more than an hour, it's normal for thoughts to take over that. This is called justification. Past memories of a very pleasant or painful experience to affirm its strength or a weakness. Description of the current situation. Now you're in the thoughtless realm, judging. She neglects her children. Triggers in human interaction. Wahrgenommene Arroganz ist lediglich eine weitere Ausprägung des Egos. Nur Menschen mit geringem Selbstwertgefühl fühlen sich getriggert. Sowohl das Gefühl von Überlegenheit als auch von Unterlegenheit sind Manifestationen des Egos. Die sich überlegen fühlen, tun dies aus einem Gefühl der generellen Unterlegenheit heraus und suchen nach Aspekten, in denen sie sich überlegen fühlen. Hier kommt die Ego-Identifikation ins Spiel. Ich nutze ein kleines Selbst, um mich damit anderen überlegen zu fühlen, da ich im großen Ganzen mich unterlegen fühle. Das Gefühl, besonders zu sein. Letztendlich ist jeder besonders, nur wir sind nicht mehr besonders als andere. Das Gefühl, das besonders sein zu wollen, resultiert aus der Angst, gleich zu sein. The desire to be special comes from the fear of being the same. Gleich zu sein bedeutet nicht gut genug zu sein, nur wenn man sich abgrenzen kann. Unterscheidungsfähigkeit in der Welt von Form. Fühle ich mich besonders und somit gut genug? Illusorisch gut. Das Gefühl der Besondersartigkeit kann von anderen Menschen mit meinem kleinen Selbstkonzept integriert werden. Wenn ich mich nicht besonders fühle, kann ich mich nicht mit Menschen assoziieren, die besonders sind. Ich habe das Gefühl, etwas hinzugefügt zu haben. Weiterhin verletzt werden, sich angegriffen fühlen. Zweite Ausprägung ist irrationale Angst. Das Ego fühlt sich immer inkomplett an, da es eine Formmanifestation ist und etwas in uns weiß, um diese Unkomplettheit. Da gibt es zwei Wege, das Dilemma der Unkomplettheit zu lösen. Zur Einheit zurückkehren und das Wahre erkennen, das Eternal Self, das Observer Beyond Form, und etwas hinzufügen zu wollen. Diese Unkomplettheit führt dazu, dass wir uns getriggert fühlen. Wenn wir die Unkomplettheit in uns selbst wahrnehmen, wenn wir sie in anderen wahrnehmen, wenn andere sie in uns wahrnehmen und wir das bemerken oder sie das ansprechen. Menschen, die selbst arrogant sind und sich selbst als arrogant nicht akzeptieren können. Trigger Arroganz in anderen, was du in dir selbst nicht akzeptierst. Die gegen sich mehr behaupten würden. Diese Behaupten des Arroganten triggert sie, weil sie sich dagegen wehren, sich selbst zu behaupten, wehren sie sich dagegen, wenn jemand anderes sich behauptet. Ego versus Seele, des höheren Selbst. Das Ego will uns beschützen und damit klein und sicher halten, und das höhere Selbst strebt nach Ausprobieren und Wachstum, mutig voranzuschreiten. Ich schwöre mir selbst, dass ich mich auf den Teil von mir fokussiere und den Teil ernähre, der frei sein will, der vorwärts strebt, um ein Leben zu erschaffen, das ich liebe und auf das ich stolz bin. Dirk Michael Lambert. Here he falls into the fallacy of strengthening one part of yourself and not the other. He is operating from a separation consciousness. We don't need to do something in order to thrive, not nourishing any part. We need to let go of believing in thought and thereby getting in touch with who we really are. Got it. Getting beyond the egoic entity. There are several means by which you get beyond your ego. Tony Robbins is clearly identified with a standpoint as the way he talks, but his ego vanishes as he truly is serving others and understands that he doesn't matter and he's here to serve. His attitude is often to deny what he wants or to deny what the voice of the ego says and instead focuses on others. His attitude is to force and not to let go. There is no absolute true teaching. Every good teaching point in the same direction, but every teaching is still conveyed in the realm of form and thus might not be for everybody. Thus, some people get drawn to Tony and others to Eckhart. Other means are by meditation and identifying with background the observer, so encompassing and embracing the ego. Zen way is to crush the ego to the point where with the existence of the ego the circumstances would be not to stand. Letting go of the ego is deconditioning work, so it makes sense to understand how this thought habit emerges. In holding the conditioned thought pattern awareness, consciousness, it dissolves because it loses the identification. Then the pattern that we formerly were identified with becomes a pattern that we are no longer identified with. When the practice observing the mind, and finally the pattern will cease to emerge altogether, then we are free of the ego. At first it might be helpful to just observe the thoughts and let them be there without making the fact of having thought into a personal problem. So you let the thoughts arise and stay with your breath. The thoughts continue to come, but you're not carried away anymore because you are allowed to be there. Letting go and clinging to thoughts is a matter of importance. Whatever the mind deems important, it will cling to. So at first every thought is deemed very important just because it arises. This is conditioning. After a while the mental chatter and nonsense noise, Christbaumkerzen, Mental Charla, Kennedy Boot, etc. cease, and only thoughts that concern me personally are unconsciously paid attention to, so that I lose connection with the breath. The YouTube video is uploaded. Is that not great? It absolutely is. I am patient at playing it long term. Journey to Giving 291. And so we're coming back to getting up every day and making the content and documenting my journey and serving my client, and that is all good. It is all good. That is the way that we're doing it. And I'm continuing to publish more and more articles. Exactly. Exactly. This is great. Yeah, this is so easy to be publishing the content that I want and need, getting myself into the right order with the right balance of talking through the YouTube videos and my content, doing outreach, yahoo, hey. Doing more outreach, yahoo, to gain more clients for my biz, yahoo. Now I'm really ready. Now I am really ready, yahoo, and I am talking to people every day, and I'm gaining the clients that I need, yahoo, yahoo, hey, yahoo, 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 20-day streak, posting every day, posting every day, hey, Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. ya ya hey ya ho hey ya ya way. Hey ya 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 hey ya begin vorwärts ya teaching to the world ya hey ya teaching to the people of this world, Yahoo, the things that I am doing here, Yahoo, Yahoo, about the egoic entity and uploading another video, massive production, es ist leicht, Yahoo, 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 effortlessly getting forward, Yahweh. Hey, Yahweh.
Build this powerful Instagram AI agent using Claude 3.7. What this is going to do, guys, is first of all, it's going to grab the latest information from the internet or whatever your blog or niche is. Once it's done that, this AI agent, powered by Claude 3.7's brand new model that's freaking kicking ass right now, will decide whether or not it's relevant for your niche. Once it's done that, it will search the internet, it will check our database right here of Valrux, of which it's got hundreds, and then what it will essentially do is write down the article URL, a short overview, give you a hook unique to that video, and then give you an opening script for your shorts. Basically meaning that you can 100x grow your YouTube shorts, your Instagram, your TikTok, without the hassle of trying to find the most relevant news. I'll show you how to build this entire thing step by step and leverage this awesome new AI agent model. So if that's of interest, grab that coffee and let's dive straight in. And I'll show you how this works to demo, and to do that I'm going to get the latest.
Hey ya om Yahweh Yahim Yah. Hey ya om ya om ya ya om. Hey ya om ya 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 om. Hey ya ya om hey ya. Hey ya om ya 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 ya. 4 of 5. Alright, this is easy. 5 big videos. Es ist so leicht und easy. Und nun machen wir weiter mit dem Content. Ja, hey. Ja, oh, hey, ja, hey, oh, hey, ja, oh, hey, ja, hey, ja, hey, ja, oh. Ego. Here we are again. Okay, got it. Let go of the ego's deconditioning work, so it makes sense to understand how this thought habit emerges. In holding the conditioned thought in pattern, in awareness and consciousness, it dissolves because it loses the identification. Then the pattern that we formerly were identified with becomes a pattern that we are no longer identified with. And finally, the pattern will cease to emerge altogether. Then we are free from the ego. At first, it might be helpful to just observe thoughts and let them be there without making the fact of having the thought into a personal problem. So you let the thoughts arise and stay with your breath. The thoughts continue to come, but you're not carried away anymore because they are allowed to be there. Letting go of clinging to thoughts is a matter of importance. Whatever the mind deems important, it will cling to. So at first, every thought is deemed very important just because it arises. Got it, we had this already. Cool. So make a little note here, here, exactly. Getting beyond the egoic entity. Okay, well, we probably scripture that. Mechanism is easy. So leicht zu fahren und easy. Okay, it's easy. Alright, well. At first, it may be helpful to convince the mind through thought. That is the most important thing, is the present moment, and that the future does not hold any greater good than this moment. Then, that the connection with life that is with your breath, heartbeat, and inner body is crucial. At a large stage, all thoughts are deemed relatively unimportant. As I have observed, it is not possible to hold more than 3 processes in awareness at the same time. This could be breath, heartbeat, and inner body awareness. As soon as you pay attention to a thought, the one of the other 3 is lost. Ego is diminished by holding in awareness without reacting to it. It is allowed and not made into a personal problem. Therefore, the practice of detaching from whatever arises is helpful. Then you gradually go to more challenging situations and let life lead you towards them and hold them into awareness. With this constant practice, you at some point will get to the realization of who you really are. The 5 aggregates. Every human being consists of 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. This is interesting. Form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Interesting. These are the 5 elements that constitute the false self, the ego. I always ask myself, which of these 5 aggregates is my suffering due to? Dies sind die Aspekte des Ego nach den buddhistischen Lehren, Thich Nhat Hanh, the heart of the Buddhist teaching. Form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Aspects of the egoic entity within my form. Trigger A. Wanting, einen State erreichen zu wollen, zum Beispiel einen gedankenlosen State oder Erleuchtung. Dies schließt die Trennung mit ein, denn etwas zu wollen bedeutet zu affirmieren, es derzeit nicht zu haben. Often I experience this when I feel unfulfilled on the form level, when I have not been in touch with the eternal for a certain time. This can also come as a spark of empowering motivation after sport or after the handling of anger or general consciousness. The solution here is meditation. I am aware that there is nothing to be achieved ever because nothing can really be added. Really, nothing real can be added. By trying to attain a certain state, I might miss what is already always present. Trigger B. Wanting to get things done. This is born out of the egoic fear to not be good enough and not being completed in time when I do not do things. With that comes an uneasy feeling that I don't do enough. I become angry and I'm not aligned with life, which shows in annoyance with my grandparents, for example. The solution is meditation. I will recognize that there is nothing to be done. Only one thing to be known, and that is that I am the observer and that the observer is the one. The one is one, the one. I also let go of the solution as this gives another form to hold on to. Trigger C, wanting to be special. The ego tries to strengthen itself by separation. This delineation, Abgrenzung, strengthens the self in the confined boundaries. The solution here is meditation. I may recognize that the specialness is only a surface aspect. In the core, we are all one. The specialness is something to be recognized on the level of form, but not to form an identity out of it. Trigger D. Becoming too comfortable and avoidance of social contact, not wanting to get up and wanting to stay in bed. Here, there is attachment to the pleasant feeling. This is born out of allowing thinking and believing in thinking. Often this pattern happens after I have read 4 hours. I am aware that no state is lasting forever and that a state is only form. The solution here is meditation. I may recognize that all these states are only surface level phenomena and that I am lost in them and not in touch with the depth of my being. The solution on the level of form is jumping up and going down and doing push-ups followed by a meditation. Got it. Trigger E. Avoidance feeling with experienced cold. Trigger F. Avoidance feeling when I experience thought. Here I want the thought not to be there. The avoidance of thought is due to the attachment of the thoughtless state, which is linked to the mind to a desired outcome, enlightenment or pleasure. The solution here is meditation. I may recognize that every avoidance is due to an attachment somewhere else. Attachment again is a sign for the longing for a future state, thus the identification with thoughts somewhere. I may recognize that in avoiding I am in a separation consciousness and thus on the surface of my being and not at the core. Trigger G, needing food. The need for food always stems from an unsatisfactory mental emotional state, which in the past have linked to the thoughts about comfort food. The solution here is meditation, as it always was in my case, as I wrote this. I may recognize that when I hold the thought about comfort food in consciousness and don't believe in them, I touch a deeper level of my being. After all, to who I really am, and the adding of food does not matter. It matters only on the surface sense of self, my egoic entity. The need for food is a sign that I am not in touch with the depth of my being, but am identified with the surface of my being. Trigger H. Rechtfertigen vor anderen in meinem Kopf. Every time the feeling that I need to justify myself or tell myself what I'm going to say to others that are important to me, I realize that nothing ever is important and that this form is impermanent as well. So it won't matter if I live up to their standards or not. All that matters is that I follow my primary life purpose, which is to live in accordance with life itself. Oh, the skin on my fingers tastes so nice. Trigger I, projecting into the future. This can also observe when doing sports when I quit prematurely because I've projected the estimated pain into the future. The compulsion of projection into the future is born out of an egoic inclination to try to control in order to help us and itself survive. It also gives us an expectation, a form that the ego can hold on to and that compare the situation to when it is really happening. It needs form to compare. The solution here is meditation. I may recognize that there is no future, only a present moment. The future can't be controlled by thinking. The closer we get to have a pleasant future is to let go of wanting to control the future and abide in the present moment. In doing this, we can plant the seeds for a future that helps us express who we really are. We can deal with future circumstances in space, but only if we reside in space in the present moment and in no thought, low thought state of consciousness when we set cause and effect chains that create the future that we need in order to grow. Thinking that I need to do more research and reading and projecting planning about it. Trigger J. Thinking about money and challenges and if in the future I will be able to have enough money. Well, I did not know back then that it would take another 6 years, but that's totally okay because I am a teacher and I will pull this off and I'm a great coach. I can provide great value to people. Trigger K. Excessive self-analysis stems from the belief that I become what I want to be faster when I know myself better. It is in the compulsion to understand the past in order to control the future. The solution here is meditation. I might recognize that self-analysis is helpful to bring consciousness to a very unconscious state in retrospect, but it also takes you away from the present moment. So it's best to go beyond self-analysis at all and abide in the formless, as there is nothing ultimately true about yourself that you would get by analysis. Trigger L, thinking about the past. Trigger M, judging the present moment. Judging the present moment in a conditioned response by the egoic entity in order to make this moment into a form that the mind can work with. It then can be compared, projected into the future, or made into a personal thing. The urge to judge is abolished when the need to judge is abolished. The understanding that we lose touch with life because we lose the present moment makes thinking futile. Also, we need to grasp that every thought is incorrect and does not display our formless nature. The solution here is meditation. I may recognize that judging the present moment creates a past and we lose the present moment. Every judging shows either an attachment or avoidance of the present moment. If we label the thoughtless state a thoughtless state, it is because we recognize it and compare it with either past memories of experiencing this state or with our expectation about our meditation session. Either way, we create a mind object out of the present state. Trigger N, judging people. Fear of not getting what I want. When I am triggered, then I need to say that things twice, or when grandpa and grandma use up too much time for simple things. I don't accept the present moment in this situation and I am triggered by the I am not enough scheme. When I understand that everything that happens in my life is for me, not against me, it is a lesson for me, I won't resist what is anymore. The most important thing is to be one with life and not denying or resisting the present moment. The most important thing is not practicing in my room or in front of books or the meditation cushion, but the training in real life as I will teach how to live life to people. Exactly. The fear is not getting what I want comes from the thinking that I will be more complete or happy when I get what I want. But the way to not be afraid is the way to actually getting there. I need to live from abundance and not from fear. Fear of rejection, this is fear of death. I am triggered and freeze because of fear when I approach women in nightclubs or try to kiss a very self-confident woman. This is due to feeling inferior. I only approach women with ease that I feel superior to. When I understand that the superiority or inferiority notion only comes about due to the false sense of self that constantly compares, there is no inferiority anymore. I am the one and the manifestation of the life force behind everything. Every time I freeze, I know that I am currently identified with my body and not with my eternal self. My light of union will shine through the separation of consciousness of the woman. Fear of death. I am triggered because of fear to not have enough or to run out of money. But when I understand that life will provide me for as long as I keep following my mission, these fears vanish. Also, there is nothing to fear because death, even if is nothing bad. And even other existential fears only build up the fear of death, the threat of not surviving. My life is permanent, the form is not. So even money won't guarantee my survival, my spiritual practice will, because I can help people everywhere with anything when I'm living constantly one with life. Not matching the image what I want others to have. I am triggered when I don't do the things that match either what other people think of me or what dad or my family would like to see. This is what I want them to perceive of me, but when I understand what life constantly is testing me with that, I will get to where I want to be when I only align myself with this life, and then the trigger vanishes. Exactly.